Let me tell you something before I start. I'm not a soldier. I never was. I've never fired a weapon in anger, never stood in a line of armored men, never had a metal pin to my chest. I fix things. That's all I ever wanted to do. Give me a broken machine and a quiet corner and I'm a happy man. So when people hear what happened on Bellwether Station, they always look at me funny. They expect somebody bigger, somebody with scars and a hard jaw and a story about war. And then they get me, a skinny mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a bad knee. But I was there, I saw all of it, and it started, I swear to you, over a camera. Just an old camera, the kind that spits out a little square photo while you wait. My grandmother gave it to me when I left Earth. Take pictures, she said, so you don't forget what home looked like. I almost left it behind. I'm so glad I didn't. Because if I had, I never would have met Evie. And a lot of people who are alive right now would not be. So let me take you back. Let me tell you how it really happened. Bellwether Station sat in the dark orbit of a gas giant called Orion. Big ugly planet, all bruise-colored clouds and lightning storms you could see from space. The station itself was a wheel, old, patched, leaking heat in a dozen places. Humans didn't build it. We barely understood half of it. We were the new ones out there, the latecomers. You have to understand something about the galaxy back then. There were old powers, species that had been crossing the stars for 10,000 years before a human ever looked up and wondered what the lights were. They had names like the Conquered, the Veral, the Sith Dominion. They had cities the size of moons. They had fleets. And then there was us, Earth, the new kids, the ones nobody took seriously. When you walked through Bellwether's market ring, you could feel it. The way the tall ones looked down at you. Literally looked down, half of them were 2 heads taller than any man I ever met. They'd see a human and their nose flaps would close up like they smelled something bad. We were tolerated. That's the word. Tolerated. I had a little repair stall in the lower ring, level 9, where the air smelled like ozone and machine oil, and the bad cooking from the noodles stand 2 doors down. My sign was hand-painted because I couldn't afford a hollow board. It just said VANCE, REPAIRS, in English and in the trade glyphs, and the glyphs were probably wrong because I'd copied them off a label. That was me, Theo Vance, 29 years old, 4 years off Earth, and broke in a way that follows you into your sleep. The market never really closed. There was no day or night out there, just the station's dim cycle lights going amber when it was supposed to be evening. The crowd moved in a slow river, traders, dockhands, pilgrims, smugglers, every shape you could imagine. Things with 6 arms, things that floated, things that wore breathing tanks because our air would have killed them. And in the middle of all of it, me, fixing toasters and power couplings and the cheap drones the merchants used to count their stock. I kept the camera on a shelf behind my workbench. I'd take it down sometimes when business was slow and just look at the photos I'd already taken. My old apartment in Lisbon, my grandmother's hands, a street with rain on it, stupid little things, the kind of things you don't know you love until they're 100 light years away. That's where she found me, looking at those photos, with my back to the crowd. I didn't hear her come in. Her people moved quiet. I just felt the light change, felt something standing close, and I turned around fast and nearly knocked over my solder iron. And there she was. I'll try to describe her, though words don't really do it. She was tall, taller than me, but everyone out there was, and thin in a way that looked almost breakable. Pale gray skin, almost silver where the light caught it, and these soft glowing lines that ran down her arms and along her collarbone. Bioluminescence. They pulsed slow when she was calm and quick when she wasn't. Her eyes were huge and dark, no whites at all, just deep black pools that took in everything. No hair. A kind of smooth crest on her head instead, like the back of a seashell. Her people were called the Thren. I didn't know that yet. All I knew right then was that one of the tall, quiet aliens was standing in my stall, staring past me at the little square photo in my hand, and her glow lines were flickering fast. "What is that?" she said. Her trade speech was clean, better than mine, but there was something off in how she said it, flat, careful, like she'd learned it from a machine and never used it with a real person. I held up the photo. It's a picture, a photograph. It is still, she tilted her head. It does not move, it does not change, it is a moment that has stopped. Yeah, I said, that's kind of the point. She reached out a long, thin finger and didn't touch it, just hovered over it, like she was afraid it might break or might burn her. How long does it last? Forever, I guess, as long as you don't wreck it, I shrugged. Mine are pretty old. Some of these are years old, they still look fine. Her glow went very still, all at once like someone turned a dial down. Years, she repeated. Sure. And then she said the thing I'll never forget. She said it very quietly, almost to herself. My people cannot keep a moment, we can only remember it, and memory dies when we die. I didn't know what to say to that. I was a mechanic. I fixed coffee makers. I wasn't ready for something like that on a Tuesday afternoon, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I picked up the camera. You want to see how it works? Her whole body went tight, glow flaring bright, and she said one word, and it came out almost like a gasp. Yes. I aimed it at her. She flinched. It won't hurt you, I said. It just here, hold still, look at me. She looked at me with those huge dark eyes, frozen, terrified and thrilled at the same time, glow lines trembling, and I pressed the button. The flash went off. She jumped back so hard she banged into my shelf, and a box of fuses went everywhere. Sorry, I said, laughing, getting down to pick them up. Should have warned you about the light. Hang on, just wait, watch. The camera made that little mechanical whir it makes and pushed the photo out the front. Blank gray square. She stared at it like it was a bomb. Nothing, she said, it is empty. Give it a second, it's developing. I held it by the edge the way you're supposed to, and we both watched. And slow, so slow, the colors came up out of the gray, the shape of her face, her eyes, her glow caught mid-flicker, frozen, kept. I have seen a lot of things in my life. I've seen the rings of Saturn from a porthole. I've seen a whole alien fleet pass over a station like a moving sky. But I don't think I've ever seen anything like the look on her face when that photo finished developing. She made a sound, soft, high. I didn't have a word for it then. Later I learned the Thren made that sound when something was so beautiful or so sad it overwhelmed them. There's no real translation. The closest is something like the ache of seeing. She held the photo in both hands like it was made of glass. Her fingers shook. It is me, she whispered. This is me, this exact me, this one right now kept. Yeah, I said, that's you. I can hold this. She looked up at me, and I swear those black eyes were shining. I can hold a moment of myself and it will not run away. You can keep it, take it. She froze, it is yours. Now I've got plenty, go on, it's yours. And she clutched that little square photo to her chest, over the glowing lines, and she bowed a deep, full bow, the kind I'd only ever seen the Thren give to their elders, though I didn't know that yet either, and she backed out of my stall without a word and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there feeling like something important had just happened, and I'd missed the meaning of it. I picked my fuses up off the floor, went back to work, figured I'd never see her again. I was wrong about that. Lord, was I wrong. She came back 2 days later. I was elbow-deep in a busted air recycler when I felt that change in the light again, that quiet presence, and I turned around and there she was. Same girl, glow lines going fast. Human, she said, and then exactly the words that would end up following me the rest of my life. I need that strange device again. I wiped my hands on a rag. The camera. Yes, the keeping machine. She'd given it her own name. The keeping machine. Please, I will pay. You don't have to pay. I will pay, she said, fierce, and she put down a little stack of station credits on my bench. Not much. Probably everything she had. I am not asking for charity. I am asking to buy a moment. I looked at the credits. I looked at her. There was something in the way she stood, stiff and proud and scared, that told me if I pushed the money back at her, I'd be insulting her in some way I didn't understand. So I took 2 credits off the top and pushed the rest back. That's the price. 2 credits a moment. Deal. Her glow settled. She understood that. A price was something she could trust. Charity was something that made her smaller. A price made her equal. Deal, she said. And that was the start of it. Her name was Evie. I learned it slow, over weeks, because she didn't give it up easy. The Thren held their names close. Among her own people, your name was a thing you earned, a thing that meant I trust you with what I am. When she finally told me on maybe the 6th or 7th visit, she said it quiet, looking away, like she was handing me something fragile. Evie, she said, my name is Evie. Theo, I said, mine's Theo. Theo, she tried it out. The way her mouth shaped it was strange and soft. Theo, the keeping machine man. I learned other things too, slowly, in pieces, the way you learn anything true. The Thren weren't visitors on Bellwether. They were workers. Indentured workers, that's the polite word, but the real word is closer to owned. Their homeworld, a place called Threnvar, had been, I'll use her word, opened. The Conquered, the big galactic power, had found something valuable under their oceans. Some kind of crystal that powered the deep space drives. And when the Conquered found something valuable under your world stopped being yours. They didn't slaughter the Thren. They were too civilized for that, they'd tell you. They just relocated them, moved them off-world to make room for the drilling, scattered them across 100 stations and mining colonies, gave them work contracts they could never pay off and called it generosity, called it uplift, said they were giving a primitive species the gift of the stars. Evie worked the lower docks of Bellwether, hauling cargo, cleaning the holds, 16 hours a cycle in a sealed worksuit because the dock air was bad for her lungs. She slept in a bunk stack with 40 other Thren in a room meant for 10. And here's the part that got me, the part I think about still. The Thren didn't keep things, couldn't really. They had no possessions to speak of, no homes anymore, nothing of their own. But it went deeper than that. Their whole way of being was about memory, shared, living memory, passed mind to mind among their people on their homeworld through some kind of contact I never fully understood. When a Thren died on Threnvar, their memories didn't die. They folded into the great shared remembering of the species. Nobody was ever truly gone. But out here, scattered, cut off from the homeworld and from each other, when a Thren died on a mining colony 1,000 light years from anywhere, they died completely. Everything they were just stopped, no folding back, no remembering, gone like they were never there. That's what she meant that first day. Memory dies when we die. For her people, out here in exile, every single one of them was disappearing twice. Once when they were taken from their world, and once forever when they died alone among the stars. And then a skinny human handed her a little machine that could stop a moment and keep it. You start to understand why she couldn't stay away. She came every few days, always with her 2 credits, always the same words, human, I need that strange device again. And every time, she photographed something different. The first few were herself. I think she needed to prove to herself she was real, that she existed, that there was proof of her in the universe. Then she started bringing things. A small gray stone she carried in her suit pocket, the only thing she had left from Threnvar, she said, a piece of the shore where she was hatched. She photographed it from every angle, made me take a dozen pictures of one little stone. Then she started bringing people. She'd bring her bunkmates, other Thren, all of them in their work suits, all of them with those huge dark eyes and slow glow lines. They'd come into my stall 2 and 3 at a time, nervous, glancing at the crowd, and Evie would arrange them and I'd take their picture and we'd all watch the gray square bloom into color. And every single time, every single one of them made that sound, the ache of seeing. I watched a Thren elder, ancient, his glow gone dim and patchy, his crest cracked, hold a photo of himself and weep. They don't cry like we do. Their glow goes dark in waves, dimming and brightening, dimming and brightening. He held that photo and his light pulsed like a slow heartbeat, and he said in broken trade speech, "Now I will not be forgotten. Now there is proof I lived." I had to go in the back and pretend I was looking for parts. I'm not too proud to tell you that. Word spread on the lower docks. The human with the keeping machine. The friends started coming to me in a steady trickle, always with their 2 credits, always proud, always paying, never taking charity, and I started running low on film. That was a problem. Real film for that old camera was hard to get out there. I had to order it special from a trade ship that came through Bellwether maybe once every couple of months, and it was expensive, and the captain knew he had me over a barrel. But I kept buying it. I'd skip meals to buy it. I don't really know why, except that I'd seen that old man's light pulse like a heartbeat and I couldn't unsee it. Evie noticed. She noticed everything. "You are giving more than you take," she said one evening, watching me count out the last of my film. "The price is 2 credits, but the moments cost you more than 2 credits. I have done the numbers." She tapped her crest, the Thren way of saying I have thought about this. "You lose on every moment. Why?" I didn't have a good answer. I just shrugged and said, "I don't know, it feels right." She was quiet for a long time. Her glow went slow and deep. "Among my people," she finally said, "there is a thing. When someone gives you a piece of themselves and asks for nothing back, we do not have a word for it in your trade speech. The closest is one who shares their light." She looked at me with those black eyes. "On Threnvar, that was the highest thing you could be, a light sharer. We had songs about them." "I'm not anything like that," I said. "I'm just a guy with a camera." "No," she said, "you are not just a guy with a camera." And she said it so simply, so flatly, like she was stating a fact about the world, that I had to look away. I should tell you about the soldiers now, because they were always there, in the background, like whether you stop noticing until it turns into a storm. The Conquered kept enforcers on Bellwether, galactic soldiers. They called themselves wardens. They were a species called the Korath, big, armored things, 4 arms, faces behind black visors that never came up. They walked the rings in pairs and threes, and the crowd parted for them like water around a stone. The wardens didn't bother humans much. We weren't worth their attention, but they leaned hard on the lower species, the dock workers, the indentured, the Thren. I'd seen it happen. A Thren dock hand drops a crate, a warden cracks them across the back with a shock baton, keeps walking like it's nothing. The Thren just gets up, doesn't make a sound, picks up the crate, keeps working. Because what else can they do? The first time I saw it, I started forward, my hands in fists, my mouth open to say something, and the noodle stand owner, a 4-armed old fellow named Brew who'd been on the station 40 years, grabbed me by the collar and yanked me back into my stall. "No," he said, low, hard, "you do not see that, you did not see that. They just. You are human, you are nothing here, you are less than nothing. You say one word to a warden and you will disappear, and no one will ask where you went, and no one will be able to ask. Do you understand me, boy?" He shook me. "There is no law here that protects you. There is no Earth out here. There is only the Conquered. Now go back to your bench and fix your machines and do not see." So I went back to my bench, and I tried not to see. But I saw Evie every few days, and I started to notice things. A bruise along her crest, healing. A burn on her arm where the glow line had gone dark and dead and would never light again. The way she'd flinch sometimes when a shadow passed the front of my stall before she even saw what it was. "What happened to your arm?" I asked her once. "A warden," she said, flat, no anger in it. "The Thren didn't really do anger, or not the way we do. I was slow. He corrected me." "He burned you." "He corrected me," she said again, like that was the same thing. "It is not important." And she put down her 2 credits. "Human, I need that strange device again." That day she photographed her own dead glow line, the dark scar where the light used to be. She held the photo up and looked at it a long time. "Now even this is kept," she said softly. "Even my wound is a moment that exists, even the place where my light died." She almost smiled. The Thren don't smile, but there's a softening they do. There is something good in that, to keep even the bad, to say, "This happened to me and I am still here, and here is the proof. I'm a mechanic. I told you that. I fix things." And I sat there that day wanting more than anything in the world to fix what was happening to her, and knowing I couldn't, and it ate at me in a way I didn't have words for. So I did the only thing I could. I kept taking the pictures. The trouble started over a photo. It was an ordinary cycle. Amber lights, the market doing its slow churn. I was working on a hovercart's lift coil when I heard it, a commotion out in the crowd. Raised voices. The particular silence that falls when something bad is happening and everyone is pretending not to watch. I came out of my stall. Down the row, near the lift to the docks, 2 wardens had a Thren pinned against the wall. It was Evie. I knew her glow even from a distance. It was flaring, not the fast flicker of fear, but something harder, brighter, a kind of light I'd never seen off her before. One of the wardens had her by the throat, holding her up off the deck with one of his 4 arms. The other was holding something small in his armored fingers. A photo, one of my photos. I started forward before I knew I was moving. Bruce's hand shot out from the noodle stand, but I was already past it. I got close enough to hear. The warden's voice came out of his visor, flat and processed, run through a translator, all the human warmth filed off it. "Possession of unauthorized image capture. Where did you get this?" Answer. Evie's glow flared, but she said nothing. Her people don't give names, don't give light sharers up. Even choking, even off the ground, she said nothing. The warden shook her. "The image shows the relocation transports, the processing of your kind. This is restricted material. You will tell us how you obtained a recording device, or you will be processed for sedition." And that's when I understood what the photo was. A few cycles back, Evie had brought me to the upper viewport late, when the rings were empty, and asked me to photograph something through the glass. Out there, docked at the conquered pylons, were the relocation ships, the big gray transports that carried Thren off their dying world. She wanted a picture of them. "Proof," she'd said, "proof that this is being done to us, so that even if every one of us dies out here, the moment will exist. Someone will know." I'd taken the picture. I hadn't thought about what it meant. I hadn't thought about the fact that the conquered did not want anyone keeping proof of what they did to the people they relocated. The photo in the warden's hand was that picture, the transports, the evidence. And they were going to process her for sedition, which, I would later learn, was a word that meant we are going to make this person disappear, and we are going to do it slowly. The whole market had gone silent. 100 aliens, every shape you can imagine, all watching, all pretending not to watch, all doing exactly what Brew told me to do. Not seeing, keeping their heads down, surviving. And I stood there, a skinny human with grease on his hands, and I heard myself say, in a voice that cracked right down the middle, "That's mine." The warden turned his head, slow. The black visor swung around to find me. "I took that picture," I said. My heart was going so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "She didn't have any recording device. I did, it's mine, she didn't do anything." Behind the warden, I saw Evie's glow do something terrible. It went dark, not the slow waves of Thren grief, but a hard, sudden dimming, almost out, and I understood she was trying to tell me no. To stop. To go back to my stall and not see. I didn't stop. "Let her go," I said. "She's got nothing to do with it. You want the camera, you want the pictures, fine, they're mine, I'm the one who took them. Let her go." The warden holding Evie looked at the one holding the photo. Some signal passed between them, and then slow, almost lazy, he opened his hand and dropped her. She hit the deck and crumpled and didn't move. And both wardens turned, all 8 of their arms, all 4 armored legs, and started walking toward me. The crowd melted back, made a space, a clear circle on the deck floor with me in the middle of it and 2 conquered wardens coming, and 100 witnesses who would all swear afterward that they saw nothing at all. Bruce's voice, somewhere behind me, low and hopeless. "Oh, you stupid, stupid boy. I'll be honest with you. Right then, I thought I was going to die. But I'd seen that old man's light pulse like a heartbeat. I'd seen Evie hold a photo of her own dead wound and find something good in it. I'd seen 40 Thren in a room made for 10, scattered and disappearing twice over, and I'd seen what it meant to them to have one small machine that could say you existed. This happened. Someone will know. So I didn't run. God help me, I didn't run. And what happened next? What those 2 wardens didn't expect, what nobody on Bellwether Station expected, least of all me, that's the part I have to tell you next. I need you to understand what a warden looks like up close. Because the difference between seeing one across a crowded market and having one standing over you, that difference is everything. From a distance, a Korath warden looks almost elegant. Tall, armored, 4 arms folded neat against their sides, moving with this slow, heavy grace. You think soldier. You think order. Up close, you don't think anything. Your body just decides for you. Your stomach drops. Your knees want to fold. Some animal part of your brain, older than language, older than people, starts screaming, get small, get low, do not be seen. That's what I felt with 2 of them coming at me across that cleared circle of deck. Pure animal terror. My mouth had gone dry. My hands, my steady mechanic's hands that could thread a fuse in the dark, were shaking so bad I had to ball them into fists. But I'd already said it. That's mine. You can't unsay a thing like that. Once it's out of your mouth, it owns you. The first warden stopped maybe an arm's length from me. He looked down. And I do mean down. The top of my head came up to about the middle of his chest plate. The black visor tilted, studying me, and when he spoke the translator stripped every drop of feeling out of it and left only the words. "You claim the image." "I took it," I said. "It's mine, the camera's mine. She had nothing to do with it." "You are human." "Yeah." A pause, like he was filing me into some category. Human, latecomer, nothing. "Humans are not permitted to operate recording devices in restricted zones," he said. "Humans are not permitted to distribute restricted images. Humans are not permitted to interfere with a warden conducting processing." The visor tilted the other way. "You have done all 3. Do you understand the position you have placed yourself in?" And here's the thing. Here's the thing I think about lying awake all these years later. I did understand. That was the worst part. I understood completely. I knew there was no law out there that would catch me if I fell. No Earth. No embassy. No one coming. I knew that I could die on that deck and become one more person who disappeared into the Concord's quiet machinery, and that the 100 witnesses watching would all swear they saw nothing. I understood all of it. And I heard myself say, "I understand, fine. Let her go anyway." Behind the warden on the deck, Evie was trying to get up. She got one hand under herself. Her glow was a wreck, guttering, flaring, going dark in patches. She'd been choked half to nothing and dropped on her crest, and she was still trying to get up, and I knew exactly why. She was trying to get up so she could put herself between me and them, so she could take it back, so she could be the one in the circle instead of me. "Stay down," I told her. I didn't even look at her when I said it. I kept my eyes on the visor. "Evie, stay down, I've got this." I did not have this. I had nothing. But you say things like that to people you care about even when they're lies, especially when they're lies. The second warden had drifted around to my side, flanking me. I felt him there the way you feel a cliff edge in the dark. One of his 4 hands had come to rest on the shock baton at his hip, not drawn, just resting there, a promise. "The penalty for sedition," the first warden said, "is processing. The penalty for interference is processing. You have earned both." The visor came in closer. But you are human, and the conquered does not wish to spend a processing slot on something so small, so I will offer you a mercy you do not deserve. Surrender the device. Name your accomplices, return to your stall, and you may yet be permitted to continue existing on this station. It was a good offer. I want to be clear about that. It was, by the standards of that place, an extraordinarily generous offer. Brew told me later that he'd never in 40 years seen a warden offer a lower-than-conquered anything but the baton. All I had to do was hand over the camera, point at Evie and walk back to my bench, and keep existing. I thought about my grandmother. Take pictures, she'd said, so you don't forget what home looked like. I thought about the old Thren elder holding his photo with his light pulsing like a heartbeat. Now there is proof I lived. I thought about Evie at the viewport, saying proof, so someone will know. And I thought, if I hand over that camera and point at her, then they win the thing they actually want. Not the device, not the credits. They win the forgetting. They want a galaxy where the Thren disappear twice and leave no proof, where what's done to them is done in the quiet, where nobody keeps the moment. The camera was just a machine. I fix machines. I know what they're worth. But what it did, that wasn't a machine. That was the one thing the conquered couldn't allow and couldn't stand. No, I said. The visor went very still. No. You heard me, I said. My voice had stopped shaking. I don't know where that came from. Maybe you only get so scared and then your body just runs out and goes quiet. No, I'm not giving you the camera. I'm not nomming anybody. And I'm not walking back to my stall while she's lying on the floor. I took a breath. The whole market was holding its. You want the camera, I said. You're gonna have to take it off me. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not a big man, I'm not a fighter. I'll probably go down in about half a second. But I'm gonna make you take it. In front of everybody. You're gonna have to put your hands on a human who didn't do anything but stand up. And you're gonna have to do it where every single person in this market can see you do it. Now, I want to explain something because what I said wasn't as crazy as it sounds. I'd had a few cycles to think about the wardens, the way you think about a difficult machine, and I'd noticed a thing. The wardens worked by quiet. Every time they cracked a baton across a Thren's back, it happened fast and small and the crowd looked away and it was over. The whole system ran on people agreeing not to see, on the violence staying private even when it happened in public, on everyone, including the victim, performing the lie that nothing was happening. The conquered didn't rule that station with fear of the wardens. Not really. They ruled it with the agreement, the shared agreement of 10,000 beings to keep their heads down and not see. And I was a mechanic. I knew that if you want to break a machine, you don't fight the whole machine. You find the one part that everything else depends on and you jam it. The part everything depended on was the not seeing. So I made them seen. Everybody's watching, I said, loud now, loud enough to carry down the rows. Look around, they're all watching. You crack me open right here and every one of them is gonna remember it. You can't process a memory. You can't relocate a thing 100 people saw, so go on. Do it in the open. I dare you. The first warden's hand twitched toward his baton. And then, and I will hear this sound until the day I die, there was a click. A small, sharp, mechanical click, from somewhere off to my left in the crowd. I knew that sound, I'd know it anywhere. It was the sound of my camera taking a picture. I didn't understand at first. Both my hands were empty. The camera was, where was the camera? I'd had it in my stall, I'd been working, Evie. She'd gotten it. Somewhere in all of it, choked and dropped and crawling, she dragged herself to my stall, 3 meters of agonizing deck, and she'd taken the camera off my shelf. And she was sitting up against the wall now, both hands shaking, holding it up, aiming it at the wardens. Click, the flash went off. Whir, a gray square slid out. She just photographed 2 conquered wardens, cornering an unarmed human, in front of 100 witnesses. The first warden spun toward her, his processed voice climbing. Surrender that device. Surrender it now. And Evie, bleeding light from a dozen broken glow lines, barely able to hold her head up. Evie held the camera against her chest and looked up at him with those huge black eyes and said, clear as anything, "No." She'd learned that word from me, maybe 2 minutes ago. She'd never said it to a warden in her life. The Thren didn't say no. Saying no was how you got corrected, how you got burned, how you disappeared. Saying no was not a thing her people were allowed to do. She said it again, louder, "No, this is a moment, I am keeping it, you cannot have it." And then something happened that I don't think the Conquered had planned for in 10,000 years. A second click. From the other side of the market. I turned. Brew, old Brew, the noodle stand man, 40 years of keeping his head down, Brew had pulled out his battered little stall drone, the one he used to count his stock, and he'd pointed it at the wardens, and its tiny recording lens was blinking red. Click. A third sound. A trader 2 stalls down, holding up a cargo scanner, its capture light on. Click, click, a dock worker, a pilgrim, somebody up on the second tier, leaning over the rail with a comm slate held out. It moved through that market like fire through dry grass, one after another, beings who had spent their whole lives not seeing, pulling out every device they had that could capture an image, and pointing them, all of them, at 2 conquered wardens standing over a girl made of broken light and a skinny human who wouldn't move. The not seeing broke, all at once, the whole machine of it just jammed. And the 2 wardens stood there in the center of 100 recording eyes, in a silence so total I could hear the station's air recyclers humming 3 rings away, and for the first time since I'd come to that place, I watched something I never thought I'd see. I watched the wardens hesitate. The first warden's hand was still on his baton, but it wasn't moving. The visor was turning slow, taking in the crowd, counting, calculating. Because here's the thing about violence that runs on quiet. The moment it's seen, it costs something. The Conquered could make 1 human disappear. They could make 1 Thren disappear. They did it all the time. But 100 recordings on 100 devices in 100 hands, spreading to 100 more the second the market reopened, that wasn't a thing you could quietly relocate. That was a thing that got out. That reached other stations, other species. The whole loose web of the lower docks across the whole Conquered, all of them watching the same little square photo of what the wardens did when they thought no one would keep the moment. You could process a person. You could not process a story that had already left the room. And I understood, watching that visor turn, that the Conquered's greatest weapon and its greatest weakness were the exact same thing. They needed everyone to believe nothing could be done. The instant 100 people did something, even something as small as pointing a lens, the spell cracked, and underneath the spell there was nothing. Just 2 soldiers, badly outnumbered, in a room full of witnesses doing math. The second warden spoke, low, fast, in their own tongue, untranslated, but I didn't need the words. I knew that tone. I'd heard it from my own foreman back on Earth 100 times. It was the tone of a guy saying, this isn't worth it. This is above our pay. We need to call this in and not be the ones holding it when it blows up. The first warden didn't answer right away. He looked at me, then at Evie, then, slow, at the wall of lenses pointed at him. And he took his hand off the baton. I heard the whole market exhale, 100 different kinds of breath all at once. This is not finished, the warden said to me, to all of us. The translator put no feeling in it, but I felt the threat anyway, cold in my back teeth. Image capture in restricted zones is a conquered matter. This will be elevated. There will be a review. You, the visor fixed on me, you will not leave this station. You are flagged. Do not attempt to depart Bellwether. The review will find you. And then both of them turned. 4 arms, 4 legs, all that slow, heavy grace, and they walked back the way they'd come. The crowd parted for them, but different now. Not like water around a stone. More like people stepping back from something they just watched flinch. They went up the lift toward the Conquered levels, and the doors closed, and they were gone. For now, the market didn't cheer. I want to be clear about that. Nobody cheered. These were beings who'd survived a long time by not celebrating, by not drawing the line of sight, and the habit didn't break just because the wardens had. The lenses lowered. The devices got tucked away fast like they'd never been out. The crowd started to move again, the slow river resuming, people very carefully going back to not having seen. But it was different. You could feel it. Something had shifted in that room, and everyone knew it, and nobody wanted to say it out loud. I went to Evie. I got down on the deck next to her. She was still holding the camera against her chest with both hands, like she had the first photo I ever gave her. Her glow was a mess, half of it dark, the rest flickering ragged. There was a deep crack along her crest where she'd been dropped on it. Up close I could see her whole body was trembling. "Hey," I said. "Hey, I've got you, you're okay, let me see you." I said no, she whispered, her huge eyes found mine. There was something in them I'd never seen there. Not fear, not even pain, though she had plenty of that. It was something like wonder. "Theo." I said no to a warden, and he stopped. He stopped because I said no. He stopped because 100 people made him stop. "Because you stood in the circle." Her glow pulsed slow and deep. "You stood in the circle and you would not move, and you made us." She stopped. Her translator couldn't carry whatever she was reaching for. She tried again in pieces. "You showed everyone that being seen was a thing the warden was afraid of. We did not know. We thought we were the ones who should be afraid of being seen. All our lives. We had it backward. You turned it the right way around." I helped her sit up against the wall. Brew came over with a med kit from his stall, 4 arms working fast, pressing a cold pack to her cracked crest, muttering the whole time. "Stupid," he was saying. "Stupidest human I ever met. You should be dead. You should both be processed and gone. Stupid, stupid, stupid." But his hands were gentle on her, and when he'd patch what he could patch, he sat back on his haunches and looked at me, and his old face did something complicated. 40 years, he said quietly. 40 years I kept my head down. 40 years I told myself there was nothing to be done. He shook his head slow. "And then a human, a nothing, a latecomer. You stood in the circle." He looked away. "I am old. I am ashamed it took a child of a young species to teach me how to point a lens." "You didn't have to," I said. "You did it, that's what counts." "We all did it," Bruce said. "Did you see? We all did it." And there was a thing in his voice I didn't have a name for then. I think now it was hope. The terrible, dangerous, beautiful first crack of it. "They will not forget that we all did it. Neither will the wardens." Evie tugged at my sleeve, weak but insistent. "The photo," she said. "Theo, the photo I took of them, did it, is it?" I found it. It had slid out of the camera and fluttered to the deck during all of it, face down. I picked it up by the edge, the way you're supposed to, and I turned it over. It had developed while we weren't watching. The colors were all the way up now. 2 Korath wardens, towering, armored, 4-armed. And in front of them, small, defiant, ridiculous me. A skinny human with grease on his hands and his fists balled up and his chin out. Caught mid-word. No, you could read it on my face, even though my face didn't have any business looking that brave. And in the corner of the frame, just at the edge, low, a smear of broken light against the deck, Evie, sitting up, holding the camera, the exact moment she took it, the girl photographing her own bravery into existence. I'd taken a lot of pictures in my life. I've taken a lot more since. I have never taken one like that before or after. The whole thing was in it. The fear and the line in the sand and the moment the quiet broke. Kept. Forever. As long as nobody wrecked it. I held it out to her. "It's yours," I said, 2 credits. She made a sound, a wet, broken version of the ache of seeing, and she didn't laugh. The Thren don't laugh. But the thing she did was the closest I ever saw her come to it. She took the photo in both shaking hands. "This is the most important moment that has ever been kept," she said, completely serious, completely sure. "There has never been a moment like this one, and now it cannot run away." Her dark eyes came up to me, shining. "Theo, do you understand what we have done? Do you understand what this is?" A picture of a guy about to get his head caved in. Proof, she said, proof that it can be refused, proof that the warden can be made to stop, proof for every Thren on every station who has spent their whole life believing there was nothing to be done. Her glow flared, brighter than I'd ever seen it, even through the broken lines. You did not just keep a moment. You kept the moment that tells everyone the moments can be changed. Do you see? Do you see what you have made? I didn't fully. Not then. I was a mechanic on a deck floor with a flagged file and 2 wardens promising to come back. I was scared and shaking and starting, now that it was over, to feel just how scared I'd actually been. But I looked at that little square photo in her hands. And I looked at Brew, packing his medkit, who'd kept his head down for 40 years and pointed a lens anyway. And I looked at the market, the slow river, all those beings carefully not seeing. But differently now, every one of them carrying a recording of what had happened in a pocket or a slate or a memory. Every one of them now holding their own little piece of proof that it could be refused. And I started to get the shape of it, just the edge. I'd been right about machines. You don't fight the whole machine. You find the one part everything depends on and you jam it. We jammed it, all of us, with 100 lenses and 1 word. No. But here's what I didn't understand yet. Sitting on that deck with the danger past and the photo safe in Evie's hands. I thought it was over. I thought we'd won something small and survived, and that the worst of it was behind us, with maybe a review and some conquered paperwork to dread. I was wrong about that too. Because the wardens don't elevate things to a review and then forget them. The Conquered doesn't tolerate a jammed machine. And a recording of 2 wardens being made to back down by a market full of nobodies, that recording was already moving. Spreading station to station, dock to dock, faster than anyone could stop it. By the next cycle, Thren on 3 other colonies had seen the photo of a skinny human standing in the circle. By the cycle after, it was further than that. And things that spread that fast, that frighten the people in charge that badly, those things don't end with paperwork. They end with the Conquered deciding to make an example, a big one, the kind nobody is supposed to forget. I learned that 3 cycles later, when the Conquered cruiser docked at Bellwether's Conquered Pylon. A warship. The kind you only send when you've decided a problem needs to stop being a problem permanently. And when I learned what they'd come to do to Evie, to her people, to the whole lower dock, to me, I understood that the circle I'd stood in down in the market had only been the practice. The real one was still coming. That's part 3. And I'll tell you now, before I tell you the rest, it's the part where I found out exactly what a human is worth out there in the dark. You might be surprised, I know I was.